My name is Michael Rubino. I'm on a personal mission to make sure you don't get sick inside your own home.
I knew there was something wrong. I'm just so relieved there's something that you can do about it.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Never Been Sicker. I'm your host, Michael Rubino. And today's very special guest is Tori McGee. Tori, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here with us. Welcome to Never Been Sicker. Please go ahead and introduce yourself briefly and let us know why you are here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm Tori McGee, Atlanta Holistic Realtor. I'm certified in building biology, helping families around Georgia just navigate and what it looks like in finding healthy homes.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for what you do, because obviously it's very, very important. But just to give people a high level, how unhealthy are homes actually, based upon all the homes that you're seeing? And I know this isn't just an isolated problem in Georgia, by the way, but you're walking into homes, people are looking for healthy homes. How difficult of a time are you having finding those?
It's a struggle. Every family is struggling with a different issue. Maybe it's EMF, maybe it's moisture. There's just so many different, symptoms that families do struggle with. And I find all kinds of issues when looking for homes. Maybe there's past water, mold, maybe it's just the way the grading of a home is. Is it on a crawl space? Is it on a basement? There's just so many different aspects, including we have to, take into account HVAC systems and how old is the mechanicals.
Totally. Tell me a little bit about your business in terms of are clients coming to you trying to sell their house, buy another house? What does that look like? What are some of the challenges that they're running into?
That's a great question. Yes. Either somebody has already sold their home because they've found mold and they're in a temporary rental space and they're looking to find something that is healthier for their family that maybe hasn't had a past water intrusion or something that, fits their lifestyle a little bit better. And it just really depends. Sometimes they want me to sell their home and they have had an issue in the past. And so we will sell their home and then look for a home with less issues. Maybe they've had a crawl space or past issue with a basement. And so they come to me and say, Tori, I want to find a home with a slab that hasn't had, a possible issue. And maybe a family has more VOC issues, so they don't necessarily want new construction due to the VOCs. Maybe they want a year-old home that some of that, has went away and has helped them, navigate better on purchase.
Now, I have a pretty big question, because I would say a lot of clients come to me and they're like, look, I've got too much issues in my home. I'm running away from it. I want to find a new home. And I think sometimes people can have this misconception of okay, the perfect home exists out there. I have yet to find that. More times, often than not, I'm helping people create that perfect home. So I'm curious, are you having to coach people through similar challenges of just setting the expectation that, look, you want the perfect home, you're going to have to create it. Let's find something that fits the mold here, pun intended. And then let's make it healthy with working with the right people. Is that more realistic?
That's exactly right. So, some families have went through a couple of maybe bad past renovation, and that's when they want to relocate. But then I have some families that have considered relocating and then we're out house hunting and they haven't even found a home that's better than where they're at. So it just really depends on their situation. But there is a lot of families that do stay in their home, and we try to navigate at that point. What does it look like on a healthy renovation? Let's make the home you're in a healthier environment for you. And then I try to navigate and put them together with different vendors that will work good with them and their needs.
That's awesome. Do you have people frequently sending you ERMI tests or the dust tests and saying, hey, should I buy this home?
All day long. I get so many ERMIs and so many questions about it. And then I just kind of defer them back to their functional medicine doctor. I want them to have conversations with them because, have I ever seen a good ERMI? You know, I mean, they're they're all over the place. So, I mean, that's the challenge is people sometimes will go from ERMI house to house, and we know that's not cheap. That's
Yeah.
expensive adding up. And then I had one lady that really was struggling, and she's healing from cancer, and helping her. She relocated, and so we helped her with multiple inspections, and we did multiple resources, and she did find a good healthy home to start a base start so she can grow in this home with her family and continue to have it a safe place.
Yeah, I mean, I've lived in 4 homes
Yep.
as an adult, not as a kid. As an adult, I've lived in 4 homes. I recently was part of the Great Migration. Do you know what the Great Migration is?
Yes.
Good. During COVID, many
Yep.
people left and decided to change up lifestyles. We lived in New Jersey at the time. Nothing wrong with New Jersey. Grass is very green over there, but we wanted a little bit more of an outdoor lifestyle. Right around 2020, nobody knew, including myself, which way the wind was going to blow and how long this was going to be. So we said, well, we might be quarantined for a few years. So we might want to be quarantined in a place where we can spend a lot of time outdoors. And now we can't picture living anywhere else but the great state of Florida because, man, when I say outdoor lifestyle, it is really outdoor lifestyle. I mean, it's wonderful. We'll be eating dinner outside in December. What's not to love? Far cry from eating dinner outside in December in New Jersey. But part of what I had to have this harsh reality was I buy houses that I think fit the bill in terms of, does it have enough rooms? Is the square footage going to fit all of our stuff, right? What's the footprint look like? Is this a place we can grow into? I have 2 small kids, 6 and 10, right? So we need some versatility as they get older and their activities change. And is it in a nice neighborhood? Is it close to the amenities that we'd like to have, right? If it checks all those boxes, I could care less about everything else because I know I could fix everything else, right? So I'm not looking for how's the roof. Matter of fact, the house that I bought, it was the ugly house on the block, was falling apart, needed a new roof, needed new doors and windows. We found some extra stuff we weren't bargaining for, which was some issues with the stucco that had to be fixed, some termite issues and water intrusion issues that had to be fixed. But I basically was like, look, the house is great. I walked in. I was like, I could open this up and have a 2-story entrance. There's a hallway here we can relocate, and we had plenty of space to do so. I walked around and I was like, oh, this is a good footprint. I saw the vision immediately. And I basically gutted the place, remediated the place, just like I would remediate any home. And I then, renovated it the way I wanted to renovate it, designed it the way I wanted to design it. Of course, I was probably $100,000 over budget or more. Everything didn't go according to plan, just like, it doesn't go according to plan for any of us. There was 2 out of the 4 exterior walls had to be rebuilt because of water intrusion and termite damage that I was not expecting. And then it got to this point where I had to, because these walls were opened up, I had to then meet some new code requirements in terms of hurricane strapping. So who would have thought I had to spend like another $10,000 or $20,000 and installing all these new hurricane straps, right, to make the house more hurricane proof. And lo and behold, though, I now have a very healthy home for me and my family. And I think it was really, really important for me to do things the way I did things because there was a lot of surprises. I mean, those 2 out of 4 walls I had to rebuild, it was like the most subtle little sign that caused me to open up the wall. And it was like a huge surprise. It was a little rusted nail on the bottom of the wall. And I only found this out because we were taking the baseboards off to redo the flooring. We had laminate on top of a slab. I don't recommend that. The slab itself was actually in pretty good shape in Florida. We have really, really thick slabs. So it was actually in good shape. There was no moisture intrusion, but I was not going to roll the dice on that anyway and did tile, right? So as I'm removing the baseboards to do all that, I noticed a little rusted nail. And that's when I said, all right, guys, set up containment. We're opening this whole wall up, as there was windows in that wall. So I said, let's open up to the bottom of the very the very bottom of the top window on the second story so we can see all the way down. And sure enough, windows were leaking. That moisture was attracting termites. Termites were coming in, destroying up the wall. And, the wall was unfortunately couldn't just remediate it. I had to replace a lot of the framing there that was not structurally sound. Quite surprised. We have heavy terracotta roof tiles on this house. Quite surprised that the wall actually was holding up the roof. That's how much rot and damage was there. And the biggest story that I learned, this is my fourth house. The biggest story that I learned is, man, I'm 4 houses in, and every house I bought needed a lot of work. It just need. And granted, most of the time I'm looking for the ugly house on the block that needs a lot of work, because then I can have enough equity in the home to invest in fixing it up and really making it not only healthy but beautiful. And I think we achieved that. And why I'm telling that story and what I want to communicate is basically how important it is to find the perfect place that checks all the boxes. Like, the bones of this house were great. The layout was amazing. And then it just came down to having an inspection. I spent about $5,000 in testing my house, something I recommend people do. $5,000 might seem a lot of money for testing. The house is a 5,000 square foot house, gives you a little bit of an understanding. And I knew the inspector, so he gave me a better deal. I hate to tell you that I get that preferential treatment sometimes, but that's part of being in the business. And so I had to spend that money on testing, because that was actually what gave me the clue to some of the issues, so I can comfortably move forward with this house. Now, when you buy a house, it's a pretty steep investment, right?
It is. It's the biggest investment that families will make. But you made such a good point that if you do your testing, and I think a lot of families are intimidated with that remediation that you just talked about. I think that's why people really are searching, for the perfect home. But when you're looking, maybe cosmetically, the countertops can look good, but as we all know, there could be something going on inside the walls. But I love what you said about getting your inspections. Get out there, let's find out what's going on. If there's an issue, fix it, take care of the problem, because you found a house. Like you said, there's no perfect house. There's no house that's going to have zero issues with it. So, take care of the problem. And I see so many people that are happy, with a home, that you got the square footage, you got the neighborhood you want, that's especially Florida. Wow. All the outside.
Oh, I know. And you think about it, right? Like, everyone always asks me, why would you live in Florida? The humidity. And it's like, well, because I can control humidity, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I lived in the desert, I'd have to add humidity or my lips would be cracked. Matter of fact, I was out in the desert, just about a month ago for a conference, and I'm walking around with chapstick like you wouldn't believe. I don't like it. I don't like it.
Yeah.
But hey, some people love that, and they'd rather live in the desert instead of, the climate that I live in. And for me, like, I actually really enjoy humidity. Yeah. I know I might be like an anomaly there. But
I'm the same way. Born and raised here in Georgia. I'm used to the frizzy hair, and we're used to it here. But
yeah, just keep my hair short.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, and like you said, there's so many things you can do. So many families here are adding the dehumidifiers, and that's good conversations to have. Have a relationship, and work with a realtor that understands what you're trying to accomplish. And don't be scared of, projects. But I think a lot of people are nervous because there's so many, mold companies out there. They're all telling you a different story. And I think that's where people do get intimidated by.
Sure. No, and it's like, it's really, you get the Wild Wild West out here. It's really bad, because you'll have some guy to be like, no, here's what we're going to do. We're going to come in, we're going to fog the place. I'm going to charge you $10,000. You don't need to rip that stuff out and fix it properly. We've got a magic solution, right? And then you have people that are like trying to do it the right way, right? Who are giving you a bid. And then you got people that are probably going way above and beyond and, doing crazy stuff that, isn't actually helpful.
Right.
And so, it leaves people in confusion as to what they actually need to do. Right. And so, I totally understand that. But I think the reality of it is, I think people need to be reconditioned to creating the perfect home. Buying the perfect home, you're looking for a needle in a haystack, but creating the perfect home, that's doable. Now, part of the tricky part is not buying a house at the very tippy top of your budget. Because if you buy a house at the very tippy top of your budget, then it has to be, what do they call it? Move-in ready. Well, listen, if you care about health and well-being, I don't think there's such a thing as move-in ready. I think aesthetically, a house could be move-in ready, right? I don't need to touch that countertop. I don't need to touch those cabinets. I love the design of it. But then you get into some of the issues like, okay, is there moisture intrusion somewhere? If a house has a crawl space, has the crawl space been remediated? Is there moisture prevention protocols in place in that crawl space? Do we have waterproofing? Do we have dehumidifiers? If not, you're going to be doing that. As a matter of fact, I'm literally working with a family right now. They bought a beautiful house out in California, and I mean, it's a great house. But unfortunately, the crawl space and the attics are not in good condition, right? I mean, there's been many renovations to this property over the decades. It's beautiful. It's magazine ready. I mean, it's a beautiful house, but the crawl space is sick. The attics are sick. All the HVAC systems that are located in the attic spaces are sick, and they all need to be, fixed. And so it's going to be a sizable investment to do that. Now, they weren't prepared for that investment. They, it was like, it's a little bit of a shock for them because this is a very high-end luxury home. And they were like, we had no idea that mold could exist in this fashion in these areas and could be so problematic. And they're expecting kids, and, this is just kind of like not the ideal situation. They're not prepared, right? The house is a beautiful specimen, and it's at the top of the market. And then now there's unexpected costs. Child's going to be born, I think, in the next few months, right? So there's all that pressure around getting this house perfect. And this is a real problem that people are dealing with, whether there doesn't matter what income, doesn't matter how luxury the house is, it affects everyone, which is the craziest thing. Because I think a lot of people think, oh, luxury homes don't have that issue. No. This isn't a money problem. This is a education problem. This is a lack of awareness issue. If you're not aware that you need a healthy home, you're not going to be demanding one. And this is definitely a real estate issue. We're buying and selling houses without doing the due diligence that we really need to be doing to make sure that we're selling the house in a good condition to somebody, and we're buying the house in a good enough condition that's not going to create issues for us and our families. And I think we've got a long way to go. People like you are leading the charge and making it happen. So I really appreciate what you do. What are your thoughts on everything I just shared?
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, you don't know how many people that come to me and they think, okay, well, I'm at this price point, the house is going to be perfect. No, it's not. I mean, I usually have multiple inspectors out there to check that attic area. Is that attic healthy? Is the HVAC healthy? How does the plenums look? Do they take it apart, and we'll look inside of it and find it. And then I'll send the report to the listing agent if I'm representing the buyer, and they're like, well, we just had it serviced, Tori. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. And I'll show the pictures and say, well, actually, it's not. I mean, they might have had it serviced and their filters changed, but look inside. Look at all this that we're finding. So a lot of people are surprised. You're exactly right. And as in real estate, we need to do better. We need to educate. It all comes down to education. And that's great that you are having your system service. That is so important. But sometimes we have to go deeper. It's not just changing the filters. Are they cleaning that system? And what does that look like? And having a professional out that is educated in mold, and maybe not just an HVAC company. And I've been seeing a lot of mold companies transition and do both that and HVAC because they have that education, they have their certification, and they know what they're looking for.
It's really crazy. One of the things you've highlighted that I hear all the time, especially during real estate transactions, is, oh, I've had that serviced, right? And then when they actually see the photos and they realize like how criminal that company that was servicing their unit is, it's like they're just blown away. Like, you mean to tell me that they've been changing this filter, looking at this gnarly piece of equipment, and just not saying a word. They're like, yeah, that's basically what happened. Yeah, I've been paying them $100 a month, whatever it is, and they just come in, they do, very robotic, just changing out a filter and not bothering to look inside and just make sure that the thing is in good working order. It's a problem. And, especially people, HVAC, it's not true, but HVAC companies, they're typically thought of as indoor air quality companies because, we associate heating the air or conditioning the air has to do with air quality. It doesn't, it has to do with heating and cooling the air. It has to do with comfortability. But these guys make a massive impact on the air quality when they don't do their job properly, right? So if the system's too big, the system's too small, the ductwork's not sized appropriately, if the ductwork's not insulated appropriately, we get condensation, we get mold growth, we get all kinds of problems. And so their ignorance can affect indoor air quality significantly. And unfortunately, we find so much ignorance out there in that field. And, they're kind of leading the charge on indoor air quality from the customer's perception. But that's where they're dropping the ball, is that they're expected to do that, and they're not doing it well. And unfortunately, they're just changing filters, and they're not bothering to really service the unit properly. I think that's where people are getting hurt. And then they're saying, look, I had no idea, right? And that's an unfortunate part of it, because now the sellers are getting hit with all these unexpected costs, right? And their values are getting knocked down because they have all these issues that they weren't aware of because the people servicing their home weren't telling them about that. And, so I think we've got kind of ignorance on both sides that really needs some good awareness. Like I could tell you what I would do if I was listing my house for sale. I would have a full-on in-depth inspection so that I know about all of the problem areas so that I could handle them so that the new person doesn't have to, so that I can get top dollar for my house. Because I know that if I can handle them correctly and handle them with people that I know and trust, well, then that's A, less that the buyer has to do, and B, I know that I'm going to turn over the home in good condition. And I think that's the way to do it, or at least say, hey, look, these are the problem areas that I've uncovered throughout my detailed inspection process. You should still do your own detailed inspection, but I'm willing to give you these credits for these issues so that you could take care of it with somebody you trust. Like just having that transparency would be really nice.
That's exactly right. And there are, we come across a few people that do have taken pride in their homes. They have that whole house water filtration system. They've done so much work to their attics. They've got a new plenum. They've done, maybe some new duct work, and they really want to hand over a healthy home because they might have environmental concerns. They might, have a sick child, with asthma, and they want to hand it over. And I do see that all the time when I'm, listing a home that have those, high standards. The homes do sell for more. The quality is there, and people really do appreciate that.
Totally. Yeah. And it's, so we just have to realize that people do like that. There's a reason that people are coming to you, because they're looking for these homes that are, being sold where people did care and they did maintain them well and they did do everything they can to make sure that the homes were healthy. Like there is a massive market for that. And that market is willing to pay more because it is so difficult to find a healthy home, to find the perfect home. And so with all that being said, if it's so difficult to find, guess what? The supply is low, the demand is high, right? And that means people are willing to pay more. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because that's what it's going to take for people to see the value in making those investments. But if those investments start to get made, then supply gets higher, right? Even if demand gets higher, as long as the supply outpaces the demand, guess what? Prices start to go down because then there's more available, there's more competition. But right now, where we are is as a society, we're untrained, we are unaware, and we are not demanding that this supply exists. Therefore, it's not being created. So the hard truth is you can have a healthy home and you could work with people like Tori, right, who can help you find such a place. You just have to be aware that you're probably going to want to, make an investment. You're going to want to probably bring a team together, find the problems, fix the problems, and create a healthy home that you're looking for. Because I don't think a perfect home exists, but you can make a home perfect. And just by finding its flaws and fixing them, and maybe not buying your house at the tippy top of your budget. Like I basically bought a house 2/3 of the top of my budget. So it's like whatever my budget was is like I'm gonna buy a house for 2/3 of that and give myself a third to fix it up. And that's what I did. And it worked out remarkably.
I love that. I love that. And I do get a lot of families that are not scared of the challenge, because they've bought maybe that newer perfect home and they're like, I had to go and invest $50,000, $80,000 because it wasn't perfect. They bought it with another realtor. They reached out to me. They didn't find the issues until they lived in the house. They paid top dollar and they needed to fix it. So then they go and sell it and then they want to start over. And now we're looking for a home at that lower budget that they can remove walls, come in, spend the money to make the environment healthy.
Yeah, that's what you got to do. I think it's really important. If you do that, then you're in control. And if you're in control, you can create it the way you want to create it. And there's a lot of people out there that some of them just want a healthy home because of longevity reasons, right? Like they know that air quality is important. They're in on it. They definitely want to create a healthy home. They don't want a home that's going to produce VOCs, formaldehyde, mold, bacteria, toxins, etc. Good. That's the longevity crowd. Then you've got the chronic illness crowd where they've been sick because of these poor conditions in homes, and now they're much more sensitive to it. And so they're going to need a much healthier environment than the average person. And so that's another group set, right? And then you just got, people that are health fanatics that, want the best of everything and they can afford to do so. The Brian Johnsons of the world who,
Yeah, love Brian Johnson.
spare no expense at, figuring out what is the most optimal of everything, right? Yeah. So those things exist. And, it's real estate is really, I'm starting to see it now with people like yourself who are, really helping to kind of lead this charge, but it's been severely left behind. And there hasn't been a lot of companies out there that have been doing this. I could count on one hand how many healthy builders I know building healthy homes, or even healthy renovation contractors renovating and creating healthy homes. I can count on one hand healthy building suppliers supplying healthy building products. I can count on one hand healthy remediation companies that actually go the distance, like Home Cleanse, et cetera, that really are leading the charge and doing things properly. So it's a sad shame and a sad story that there's just not a whole lot out there. I would imagine you've probably had some horror stories of remediation, just being exposed to that. Would you share one?
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's why the intimidation when people call me, they tell me these horror stories that they've used someone and they either didn't show up to finish or they didn't do the proper protocols or they made it even worse and they're feeling even worse now and they're $30,000. So there are so many, like you said, maybe they get new windows and then a month later there's big water intrusion because it wasn't done right. The flashing wasn't done or whatever. Yeah. So that's the story that I get a lot. And I think, like you said, there's so few properly trained, because anybody could say they can do it and you can go make a business card and go, door to door and say, hey, I can put on this roof. I can change out that shower. But, where are your, certifications and your qualifications? And I think that's the biggest problem out there. There's not enough, professionals that are doing it properly to make all our consumers feel comfortable.
Yeah, I think that is an important point. And I think that's really, that's why I created Home Cleanse when I did, because I saw a very big need for that, proper remediation nationwide. It's why I wrote the book, The Mold Medic, an Expert's Guide on Mold Removal, because I saw that people had not a big clue as to how to remediate properly. So no, I am with you. I totally get it. But if you put together the right team, you can do it. And you've probably have way more success stories than you do horror stories, I bet.
I do. I've got a great team, and luckily, and if people really, I would say when you're talking to vendors in your state, find out what their certifications are. There are a couple here in Georgia that have a background of building biology. So it's just finding the right team and the right people that I can say, hey, these people have had success. Let's get them out during our due diligence process. Let's look to see what we can find so we can negotiate some concessions. I'm not going to ask the seller to take care of it because we don't want them in control. I want my buyer in control. Let's get you some funds so you can take care of the problem after the fact, that you have control of who's doing what work at the property. And I have a higher success rate at that.
Yeah, no, I think it's always better. I mean, if I'm buying a house, I want to be in control of that house when I turn it over, and I don't want any band-aid slapstick solution. I want, the best solution that's going to resolve the problem. And so I agree with that. A great
Yeah.
approach. Get some credits, take care of it yourself.
Yeah.
This way, it's done properly.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's a lot of times, during, and that's where it comes into hiring the right realtor for negotiations. Cause I'll get so many times, the agent will come to me and say, oh, the seller said they would take care of it. And that's when I shut them down and say, no, we're going to take care of it. This is the amount that my clients need based on the people that we trust. So, and I know it's a lot of pushback, but you need somebody that's going to fight for you on that and not settle for anything else.
Totally. Tori, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here with us. I really appreciate the chat today. I mean, this is obviously a huge endeavor, and there's a lot of change needed. So I want to thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for helping all the people that you help on a daily basis. For those in Georgia that need your services, shout them out. Let's hear, where could we find you? How do we connect with you?
Absolutely. They can look me up online, AtlantaHolisticRealtor.com. They can find me, on social media, Tori McGee, Holistic Realtor. And I've just got, just Google, maybe Atlanta Holistic Realtor. I'm out there, I'm everywhere, and happy to help have conversations about how to get you, the proper house with the proper, remediation to make them feel comfortable.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks. Thank you for having me.